starting with Ambra. Is it okay, Ambra?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Ambra, in 2015, you were brave enough to go public with something that everybody knew, but nobody talked about. Why did you do that, and how?
Well, I could say that I was 22 years old, Italian, in New York City for basically the first time. I didn't speak English so much, and let's say I didn't really know what was going to happen. It was more the fact that I knew that what was I was doing, it was the right thing to do. So when, of course, this person that I didn't know much of assaulted me, my first reaction was that that wasn't right, and that I know you need to pursue and get your own justice for that, because somebody should never touch you when you don't want to. So I just went to the police, and then I understood what was uh, the situation. That this person was super famous and powerful, and that it was able to, let's say, shut me down. So, but the first reaction was like, this is wrong. So I need to ask for help of the police, and so I went right away to speak about what happened.
Did you tape what he did to you? Were you able to tape it? How did you do that?
So basically, when I went to the police and they figured out who this person was, um, of course, I was a 22 years old model that didn't speak so much English, and especially had no power at all. Like, I was here alone, no family, nobody. And they saw this like very big gap between somebody very powerful and famous and me. And so they asked me if I wanted to collaborate with them to get proof. And of course, like I said, yes, of course. I feel like we need more to try and take this person into justice. So I need to do my part. And I think that at the time, what gave me most of the courage that I had, it was the moment that I felt this was happening before me, and it happened many times. Because the moment I went to the police, that, like the first thing that you see, it's like this window where there is like the police guy behind, and you need to tell them what happened. And I said, this person assaulted me. And when I said his name, that police guy right there said, again. And I was just confused and angry. I was thinking, what it means again? This happened before and nobody did anything. And I started to just get so mad that probably somebody else was hurt before and that it would continue doing this. So I promised myself that I would do as much as I could in my power, in my strength, to just stop this situation to happen, because I was mad for being happened to me and other people. So I just did what I needed to do. I worked with the police, and I met him again the next day. And yeah, I recorded him, and the police recorded him. And so, yeah.
But it wasn't until 2018 when the New Yorker went public that you felt that you won a battle.
Yeah.
How were those 2 years for you? What happened?
Well, 2015 was hard because I was the only person that ever went to the police against this person and went public against this person. And as I said, it was very powerful and had all the tools possible to just take me down. He discredited me in the news, like basically posted any sort of pictures where I was wearing lingerie, because I'm a lingerie model, and putting up like headlights says that I wasn't so fit for being a perfect victim, let's say. So yeah, in time he won the first battle, let's say. And so what happened is I had to leave New York, and yeah, unfortunately, I went to live in the Philippines, where my mom is from, and I had to leave the country, where I had to sign a piece of paper that basically said that nothing had happened and that I wasn't right on what happened. I then um, went into a deep depression. I couldn't like forgive myself for not trying to do more that I could, and but I had to think about my family, because at the time I saw that my brother in Italy basically had some people coming to meet him, and I felt like, I mean, that I wasn't in danger. All my family was in danger, and so I gave up at the time. But one thing that I didn't want to do was giving up to disprove. So I kept a copy of these recordings in a USB, and yeah, for 2 years and a half, I lived basically out of the United States, and I tried to be better with my um, problems that I had, and yeah, kept living life. Yeah, well, I came back to New York, and in about 2 weeks, randomly, I get the call from Ronan Farrow, that at first, of course, I didn't trust, because so many people tried to, like take me down and to discredit me, and like I wasn't sure that I could trust him. And we started to work together for 8 months, meeting like in different places in New York City. And in 8 months, I got to trust him and show that I had this proof with me, and at the end gave it to him. And that's the story that is out in the New Yorker.
How did you feel when you saw so many women backing you, starting the Me Too movement?
At first, I felt two different feelings, let's say. I was, yes, happy, but also I felt like, I mean, the time that I was alone, I was very alone. And that's like something I'm trying to like make women understand. We are able to really do um, a lot if we work together. They always try to keep us in apart, and to make us be in competition and everything, where actually, like when we all work together, like even in the situation that now is happening in Iran and in other countries, like we all can do something.
How did this change your life?
So the moment that those recordings came out, I remember that day. Like it was like the most happy I ever was, because I was believed. I didn't even need to talk. There was those recording that did. It was Ronan that did, and other women, of course, that also came forward. I just felt like free. I felt completely like able to be me, to work and do my stuff without having so much troubles that I used to. Like just the modeling, or just the fact of searching for any job was so hard, because my whole name was completely destroyed. I really felt like, wow, I have possibilities right now, and that's all I needed. That's all I wanted. I want to do life normally. That's all I wanted.
What do you do now to help other women?
Well, now, thankfully, I have a voice that I use a lot to strengthen other people voices. I collaborate with different organizations. One of them is Model Alliance, and then there is Safe Horizon based here in New York, and they do help um to improve women's rights and to start new laws that would help us to feel safe and yeah, like as everybody should feel. Like the Model Alliance works a lot in the modeling industry because it's a very unregulated um, industry, as not many people talk about. But like the modeling that is so beautiful as an industry from outside, internally has many problems. There's so many problems of human trafficking, um, of the use of images that um, is not owned by persons, and delays on payments and conditions of how mid models works. That's many times are super young in other countries, and people take advantage of it, especially like many agencies and people that you should trust, because they are the only people that you have when you travel the other way of, of the country to just start and do your job, because at the end modeling is a job, and we all need to be treated in the right way as anyone should, having insurances and yeah, being covered in the moment that a client would not pay, and so we don't get paid. Like those things should never happen. And and of course, all the problems of sexual abuses and assaults. And
What do you know about our new Menos in Argentina? Have you heard about the Menos movement?
yeah, I heard and I read about it. Um, as I was talking about, like we all women are connected. Like at the end, we don't talk to each other, we don't share, because as people are afraid to even just talk of what happened to yourself. But at the end, like we all go through the same thing. I never heard of a woman that wasn't like cut cold in the street or being treated in a weird way by a man.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much, too.
Sigrid, are we ready to start?
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, tell me who are the women you represent and what did they suffer? What did they go through?
For the last 8 years, I've been representing survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. They ran a sex trafficking scheme, probably the longest running one that we know of in history, for over 20 years. So there were unfortunately a number of young victims in their wake, and a group of those victims started to come forward in 2015 and thereafter, and I had the privilege of representing them in their journey toward justice.
Mm-hmm. When they went to tell you their story, what did you think? Did you think that you could go for that? Because now it's easy to everything went well, but at that moment, I mean, wow, we are talking about powerful people, very powerful people.
Correct. So I was approached by Virginia Giuffre, who's my client, back in 2015. And to put that in context, that was before the Me Too movement. It was at a time when women, particularly in the media, were questioned whenever they came out against an accuser, an abuser. And so in that circumstance, in that environment, it was already very, very difficult for somebody to make those allegations public. And I was asked to represent Virginia right after she had made some of her allegations public in late 2014. I met her in 2015. I flew to New York. I had just come back to my law firm from maternity leave. I had my fourth child, a baby girl, and it was work that I had done in the past. I've done a lot of volunteer work in the space of sexual trafficking and survivors of domestic violence. So I was familiar generally with the subject area, but it was certainly life-changing when I sat in that room with Virginia and heard her incredible story, how she was victimized so significantly for so many years by so many very powerful, very privileged people. And to sit with her and hear that story, and to hear her bravery and her courage and her willingness to try to go after those individuals, it was just a really significant moment in my career. It was life-changing in many ways. At that point, irrespective of the fact that the names that I was hearing from her were remarkable, I just knew that she couldn't stand on her own. This was a situation that I always say, in that case, truth is stranger than fiction. I mean, the people who were involved were, incredible politicians, very wealthy individuals, billionaires. And it's almost unbelievable when you hear the story. So I just knew that she needed protection right away. She needed help right away. And so that turned my life upside down. And that for probably the first 2 to 3 years, it was, really 24/7 with her and the work that we were doing for her. And as that work started to unfold and we started to challenge some of her abusers, slowly but surely information started to come out about the trafficking scheme. And so we saw in that moment a variety of things happening. The Miami Herald issued an incredible story that outlined some of the material that we had uncovered. And then we saw different steps taken thereafter. As you saw, once the Miami Herald issued their story, of course, Jeffrey Epstein, who had been free and clear for many years, was arrested in July of 2019 and then died in prison just months after. And then thereafter, in July of 2020, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested and is currently, just this past July, has been sentenced to life in prison. And also, as Ambra was saying about the modeling industry, Jean-Luc Brunel, who had been someone who had victimized my client as well, and many others, was finally arrested. I flew to Paris during COVID with my client Virginia, and she provided testimony against him, and he has ultimately passed away in prison as well. So there were a number of things happening in those years leading up to where we are now.
What was the worst difficult that you had to face during this process?
I think the most difficult thing I would say for me personally was living this journey with these women and having to hear about their pain. It is incredible what they've lived through, and incredible how strong and resilient they are after having suffered what they've suffered. So I would say it's that's hard to hear, and it's very empowering when you're a lawyer to feel like you can try to do something for them or help them in some way, but it's also really difficult. And I think because that subject matter is so heavy and so serious, I internalized a lot of that, right? So we, my family allowed me to do a tremendous amount of work in this space, really spending weeks and weeks on end away from my home to try to get witnesses and get information to help build the case. So there was a lot of that happened on the side of my personal life. I was followed by Epstein and his thugs from work to home and various places. And I had threats that came in that were, difficult. There were many times when I questioned, for my family, if I was doing the right thing. I knew that I was doing the right thing for my clients, and I was willing to do it, but I was also putting, my family members at risk. And I have 4 young children who are precious. So there were some moments that were very difficult along the way. But I tell my clients now, because I do fortunate to do a lot more charitable work in this space. And what you find is when you bring light to a problem like this, the perpetrators actually get quite scared, right? And you can do much more in the light by bringing it into the public than you can do by staying quiet.
Jeffrey Epstein, Prince Andrew, what do they have in common?
Well, I think what we've seen from all of this is how power and privilege can allow these kinds of things to exist for so long. I mean, what was really shocking to me in the course of our investigation was after Epstein died, he has an island in the US Virgin Islands where he would transport many of these young victims and victimize them there on that island. And of course, he flew private planes in and out of those islands. And after he passed, some of the people at the air traffic control who worked there regularly were commenting on the fact that there had been so many young girls coming in and out, but they were afraid to say anything because he was so wealthy and powerful. And if just one of those workers had been brave enough to come forward and say something, they could have helped protect these little girls who were being flown into that island from all over the place. So, it's really, the whole matter is really about power and privilege and being willing to challenge that, being willing to stand up to that, as Ambra so bravely did and so many other survivors. It's really taking that moment to say, I'm going to step up, I'm going to call out this conduct, and I'm not going to back down irrespective of what happens. And that takes a lot of bravery.
The women you represent, how do they feel now, if you can speak for them?
I think we've seen a lot of justice that they never expected. Frankly, with Ghislaine Maxwell's arrest and imprisonment, that was really a powerful moment in this journey because, of course, she was facilitating and committed many crimes against my clients as well. And they were very offended by that. I think they were more offended, frankly, because she was a woman and she used that femininity to woo them in and to victimize them. And so that moment this summer, standing in court, reading my client's statement, getting to stand beside Annie Farmer, my client who testified so bravely at that trial, and then hearing the judge issue that ruling of the 20-year sentence in prison, which essentially puts her in prison for the rest of her life, was just incredibly powerful. So I think they've seen a lot of justice. Now, that doesn't rectify or fix what happened to them. They will always have to live with those scars and those wounds, and that is forever difficult for them. But I think seeing the justice system support them in some small way has been really good for their healing.
Do you know something about Ni Una Menos in Argentina? Something you can tell them or speak about them?
Yes, of course. So Not One Less. I think that it's such a beautiful movement. And, while we talk about the atrocities that we've seen in the United States, in Argentina, it is so much more significant in many ways. And the laws are not up to par to protect the women in the way that they should be. So seeing them gathering and coming forward and demanding that from their politicians is so important. And I just hope that they will feel brave to continue that movement and work toward it. And I hope that the politicians and others who can help in Argentina are listening, because it's critical that those women get the protections that they need.
I will ask you both if you can leave us a greeting for the World Economic Forum in Argentina. Let's start with you, Sigrid, if you want.
So thrilled to be here with you at the World Economic Forum, and we wish you all the best. Hope that it's a wonderful experience for everybody.
Ambra?
Thank you. Thank you really much. I am so amazed on knowing that this is happening and that you all are keeping on having the voices of many heard and that you're trying to make a change. So happy to be part of it.
Thank you both so much for your interview. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you.
Telma Fardín es actriz, cantante y activista argentina, integrante del colectivo Actrices Argentinas, el cual es una coalición de actrices que se manifiesta a favor de diversas causas de interés socioeconómico y de género. Presentó una denuncia por abuso sexual agravado contra el actor Juan D'Artés. No va a poder asistir porque su juicio se reinició, y esto lo va a explicar mejor Silvina Acosta. Es actriz, directora de casting, contenidista y productora argentina, licenciada en Psicología, especializada en género y diversidad. Socia fundadora de Sinapsis Producciones, conforma la comisión directiva de la Sociedad Argentina de Gestión de Actores e Intérpretes y es miembro de la colectiva Actrices Argentinas. Adelante.
Buenas tardes todos y todas. Bueno, como acaba de anunciar Thelma, tendría que estar acá. Y una vez más, luego de 4 años que se inició este camino de buscar justicia para Thelma Fardín y para todas, ¿ya? Una vez más tiene que postergar sus compromisos porque el jueves se reinicia la declaración que debería hacer Juan de Artés por el juicio por abuso sexual agravado contra Thelma Fardín, el último día de la gira internacional teatral de Patito Feo, del cual también fui parte de ese elenco como madre. En ese entonces, igualmente, el único adulto justamente era Juan de Artés. Las madres de las protagonistas no estábamos dentro de la obra, y este delito ocurrió el último día de la gira en Nicaragua antes de venir para la Argentina. Bueno, voy a hacer una pequeña cronología, justamente como hicieron las compañeras Ambra y Sigrid, contando estos casos que los iba escuchando y encontrando lamentables paralelismos con respecto a la vulnerabilidad de la víctima y al poder de quien comete ese abuso sexual. Luego del Ni Una Menos, del MeToo y todo esto que estábamos escuchando, hubo un par de denuncias contra D'Artés, como el de Calu Rivero en el 2018, que era una denuncia por acoso durante las grabaciones de una novela Se dice amor, y no puede ir a juicio justamente porque fue una causa prescripta. Ante esto, Anita Co y Natalia Juncos hacen la misma denuncia pública respecto a distintos acosos sexuales en distintas tiras desde 1999. O sea, vuelvo como con los paralelismos, ¿no? Como esto de Epstein, 20 años haciendo... Bueno, estas cosas pasan en todo el mundo. Es ahí donde Thelma, si bien había sufrido este abuso sexual hace muchos años, todavía no prescribía la causa y se anima a denunciarlo, a presentar la denuncia, teniendo la dificultad de que esto pasó en Nicaragua. Entonces estos hechos deben ser denunciados porque Argentina no tiene jurisdicción. Hace esa denuncia y es ahí que el colectivo Actrices Argentinas, que nosotras nos habíamos autoconvocado por la ley del aborto seguro y gratuito, es que comenzamos a armar esta conferencia de prensa que, así como se reconoce el MeToo, se reconoce el hashtag Mirá cómo nos ponemos, porque era lo que Juan de Artés le decía a Thelma: mira cómo me pones, cuando la violaba. 16 años ella, una niña de 16 años con un hombre de 45 años, que además era el protagonista, era el único adulto mayor. Eso hace, y lo digo también como psicólogo, a las veces de tutor, de padre. Es muy difícil, realmente es muy difícil lo que pasó Thelma. Cuando viene y hacemos esta conferencia de prensa dentro de lo que hemos hecho desde Sagay, y ahí también soy parte, habíamos realizado una encuesta que arrojó números estadísticos muy importantes para nuestra comunidad actoral, porque queríamos saber un poco de qué se trataba la trayectoria laboral de los actores y las actrices. Una de las preguntas era a las actrices y a los actores si en algún momento de su carrera se habían sentido, habían tenido acoso sexual o abuso sexual en algún momento de su trayectoria laboral. Bueno, el dato es de que el 66% de las actrices en algún momento de su trayectoria laboral había sido acosada o abusada sexualmente, y siempre en espacios laborales de decisión, ¿no? Como una oficina de casting, una oficina de producción, siempre en lugares privados donde después es muy difícil tener, como en el caso de Ambra, una grabación de tu victimario para después poder acusarlo y que sea mi palabra contra la tuya. Entonces eso también fue utilizado en esa conferencia de prensa de Thelma Fardín en diciembre del 2018. Estamos al 2022 y Thelma no está porque el jueves se reinicia este juicio que recién se pudo lograr el inicio en noviembre del 2021. A la semana, a los 2 días de la conferencia de prensa, la línea 144, que es la que atiende y asesora a las mujeres contra la violencia de género, creció un 1200%. Un 1200% en 48 horas. ¿Se dan cuenta la masividad lamentable de la cantidad de mujeres y niñas que sufren acoso y violencia sexual? Pero era un tema que antes no se hablaba. Este tipo de causas, de casos, testigos, nos ayudan a todas y a todos a poder alzar la voz. Por eso es tan importante el poder acompañar la justicia por estos casos. Aprovecho justamente para invitarlos a los hombres y a las mujeres y a las infancias a acompañarnos este jueves en la UFEM, que es la unidad fiscal especializada contra la violencia contra las mujeres, que va a ser a las 12 horas en Perón 667, porque se reinicia, como les decía antes, el juicio, que también estuvo tratando de postergar una y otra vez el año pasado, cuando se comenzaron las audiencias, en noviembre del 2021, que también estuvimos ahí en UFEM, declaró como testigo Calú Rivero y Anita Kopp. Luego de eso se seguía, después de la feria judicial de enero del 2022, y D'Artés hizo una presentación como para mitigar por el tema de la jurisdicción, porque Nicaragua y Brasil no tienen convenio de extradición. Él es nacido en Brasil, tiene su ciudadanía en Brasil, y es así que a la semana de la conferencia de prensa se va profugado a Brasil para que Nicaragua no lo pueda pedir y extraditar de la Argentina. Como Brasil no tiene ese convenio, se mudó a Brasil con su familia. A la semana, luego de una entrevista que le dio a Mauro Viale, donde ahí la verdad es que asume que ha cometido esos hechos, dando vuelta algunas cosas, sin reconocer obviamente que es una violación, pero donde reconoce eso, se eleva mucho, escala mucho el escándalo, y es que se va a Brasil y tiene la imposibilidad de salir de Brasil porque tiene alerta roja de Interpol y no puede salir de las fronteras. Así que bueno, por el momento esa es la actualización de Mirá cómo nos ponemos. Nos seguimos poniendo en marcha con la necesidad de que antes de fin de año, de una vez por todas, tengamos una sentencia y se termine esta tortura que es realmente para las víctimas cuando nos dicen y nos acusan, pero ¿por qué no denuncian? Y porque es un desgaste muy grande, es una demanda de dinero muy grande también, que no tenemos. En general, estos hombres, de hecho, D'Artés tiene el abogado más caro de Brasil. Para Thelma Fardín, el costearse todo trámite, todo viaje, toda acción requiere todo una ayuda y una colaboración de muchas, porque no tenemos el mismo acceso a la justicia si no tenemos el mismo acceso al poder. Entonces, ese también es un gran tema que seguramente lo van también a debatir en otros paneles de UEF, porque el acceso a la justicia, entre la falta de perspectiva de género que hay en la misma, que la atraviesan todos los estratos, más el no tener los accesos, el acceso económico que te hace tener ese acceso al poder de tener justicia, va truncando mucho esta situación. Y una de las cosas con las que especulan los victimarios es con el desgaste. Llega un momento que, como le pasó a Ambra antes de lo de New Yorker, es que terminó firmando algo y como recibiendo un dinero. O sea, llega un momento que las amenazas a poder seguir con tu vida es tan grande que es muy difícil continuar. Así que le estamos poniendo mucho apoyo y mucha garra a que esto continúe por el sendero de la justicia, que es lo único que queremos. No sé si quieren abrir un espacio de preguntas o consultas. Sí.
Este caso lo vengo siguiendo desde el día 1. Me interesa particularmente porque es un caso testigo, ¿no? Para el movimiento como país, digo, que fue el que cambió las reglas del juego. Ahora, también soy consciente que si Telma Fardín no hubiese tenido 16 años, esto no hubiese llegado a nada. O sea, porque esto fue tan horroroso, digamos. De la misma manera que con Calu no pasó nada antes, o con Anita no pasó nada. O sea, ¿realmente vos pensás que esto para adelante va a cambiar las reglas del juego?
No sé si llegaron a escuchar, pero más o menos lo que está expresando es el beneficio, digamos, de que haya sido, entre comillas, ¿no?, menor de edad para llegar a juicio. Sí, la verdad que sí. Tiene bastante que ver con que haya sido menor de edad. Igualmente se la ha tratado como lo hizo el estudio Burlando, que fue... Recuerden que primero lo defendía d'Artés, una abogada, mujer, que no pudo, y ese día renunció el mismo día de la conferencia de prensa, que le costó justamente la inhabilitación de su título un tiempo. Luego el estudio de Burlando trató de, una de las instancias fue la de presentar una especie de consenso, como que no había habido violación porque se había reconocido un vínculo. El que sea menor de edad agrava muchísimo más la situación. De hecho, ya perdió, ¿cómo se dice cuando se presenta una ley en el Parlamento y se cae el Estado parlamentario? Muchas gracias. Perdió Estado parlamentario, pero en un momento se hizo un proyecto de ley que fue presentado por diversos partidos políticos, apoyado por diversos partidos políticos, para hacer una ley que proteja a los menores de edad en lo laboral. ¿Por qué? Porque en el ámbito artístico es la única infancia que tiene permiso para trabajar. Si no, sería explotación infantil. No se puede, los niños no tienen permiso para trabajar. Para los que trabajan artísticamente sí, pero no tenían bien las regulaciones. Se trató de avanzar hacia eso, pero bueno, siempre hay lamentablemente tantas urgencias en nuestro país que todo es un poco complicado de continuar. Yo no sé igualmente si a las infancias se las está protegiendo como se debería, porque con esto que pasó con Telma Fardín y el Mirá, cómo nos ponemos, empezaron a llegar cantidad de denuncias, no de gente artista, y es muy difícil la justicia para los menores de edad, igualmente en nuestro país. Pero bueno, esperemos que siga su curso. Muchas gracias. Gracias a todos y a todas por escucharme.